Our story begins on the molten plains of Mustafar, where the air shimmered with heat and the rivers of lava carved glowing scars across the blackened earth. Darth Vader, broken and burned, lay sprawled on the ashen slope, his body a ruin of scorched flesh and shattered armor. Moments ago, Obi-Wan Kenobi had stood over him, lightsaber lowered, his face etched with sorrow before he turned and walked away, leaving his former apprentice to the mercy of the flames. Vader's mechanical breaths rasped weakly, each one a struggle against the pain that consumed him. Yet within the wreckage of his body, a flicker of something older stirred. Anakin Skywalker, buried beneath layers of rage and betrayal, refused to die. His yellow eyes, dimming with agony, fixed on the distant stars. He had lost everything. Padme, Obi-Wan, the Jedi, his very self. But as the lava's heat seared his skin, a single thought pierced the haze. He would not let the Emperor win. Sidious had orchestrated his fall, twisted his love into chains, and now, Vader vowed, he would rise to destroy him. Far above, a sleek Nubian shuttle broke through Mustafar's smoky atmosphere, its silver hull glinting against the volcanic haze. Aboard, Senator Bail Organa scanned the horizon, his heart heavy with the news of Padme's death and the Jedi's collapse. Beside him, Master Yoda sat in silence, his eyes half closed, sensing a disturbance in the Force. They had come to retrieve Obi-Wan, to regroup and plan the rebellion's first steps. But as the shuttle descended, Yoda's eyes snapped open, his small frame tensing. He felt it, a pulse of life, faint but defiant, amid the planet's despair. Bail followed Yoda's gaze to the smoldering slope below, where a broken figure lay. Against all reason, Bail ordered the pilot to land. Obi-Wan, emerging from the shadows, protested, his voice raw with grief, insisting that Anakin was gone, that only a monster remained. Yoda, however, raised a hand, his expression unreadable. The Force, he sensed, was not yet done with Anakin Skywalker. The shuttle's ramp lowered, and Bail's guards carried Vader's broken body aboard, his armor sparking and hissing with every movement. Obi-Wan stood apart, his hands clenched, unable to meet the gaze of the man he had once called brother. Vader's consciousness flickered, his mind a storm of pain and fragmented memories. Padme's smile, the Jedi temple in flames, Sidious's cold laughter. As the shuttle lifted off, Yoda placed a hand on Vader's chest, channeling the Force to stabilize his fading life. The act was not mercy, but necessity. The rebellion needed every weapon, even one as dangerous as this. On the journey to Alderaan, Bail and Yoda debated in hushed tones. Vader could not be trusted, yet his knowledge of Sidious's plans was unmatched. Obi-Wan, silent, stared out at the stars, his heart torn between duty and the ghost of the friend he had failed. On Alderaan, in a hidden medical facility beneath the palace, Vader's body was rebuilt. Bacta tanks hummed, droids worked tirelessly, and rebel medics grafted cybernetic limbs to replace what the lava had claimed. His new armor, cobbled together from salvaged parts, was less imposing than Sidious's design. Functional, unadorned, a stark white instead of black, symbolizing a tentative break from his past. When Vader awoke, his mechanical breaths steadied, but his eyes still burned yellow, a reminder of the darkness within. Bail stood before him, flanked by armed guards, and laid out the terms. Vader would serve the rebellion, provide intelligence on the Empire, and face judgment for his crimes when the war was won. Vader's response was a low, rumbling laugh, bitter and hollow. He had no loyalty to the rebels, only a burning need to see Sidious's empire crumble. For now, their goals aligned. The rebellion's leaders gathered in a war room deep within Alderaan's mountains. Mon Mothma, her voice steady but wary, outlined the Empire's growing stranglehold. The Death Star, still under construction, loomed as a shadow over the galaxy. Obi-Wan, now a reluctant general, argued against trusting Vader, his words sharp with pain. Leia Organa, young but fierce, watched Vader with a mix of curiosity and distrust, unaware of the blood that bound them. Vader, restrained by magnetic cuffs, shared fragments of Sidious's plans, the locations of Imperial shipyards, the names of loyal Moffs, the schematics of Star Destroyers. Each revelation was a calculated move, a way to prove his worth while concealing the full depth of his motives. He spoke of Sidious's reliance on fear, his network of inquisitors, and the secret experiments on Mustafar to harness the dark side. The rebels listened, their faces grim, knowing they had no choice but to use him. Vader's first mission came swiftly. The rebellion had intercepted a transmission from the planet Ryloth, where Twi'lek resistance fighters were under siege by Imperial forces, led by Grand Moff Tarkin. The rebels needed to disrupt the blockade and evacuate the survivors, but the mission required someone capable of facing Tarkin's elite troops, and possibly an Inquisitor. Mon Mothma assigned Vader, Obi-Wan, and a small team led by Captain Rex, a clone veteran who had defected after Order 66. Rex, his armor repainted with rebel insignias, eyed Vader with open hostility, his hand never straying far from his blaster. Obi-Wan, tasked with keeping Vader in check, felt the weight of their shared past like a stone in his chest. The team boarded the Tantive 4, its corridors humming with tension as they jumped to hyperspace. On Ryloth, the sky burned red with turbo-laser fire. Imperial walkers stomped through the spice mines, crushing Twi'lek villages under their metal feet. Vader, his white armor stark against the dusty landscape, moved like a specter, his red lightsaber igniting with a hiss. Rebel troops followed, their blasters cutting through stormtroopers as Vader carved a path toward the Imperial command post. Obi-Wan fought at a distance, his blue blade a steady counterpoint to Vader's ferocity, deflecting bolts and shielding civilians. Rex coordinated the evacuation, guiding Twi'leks to waiting shuttles, his voice calm but urgent. The mission was a success, but the cost was high. Dozens of rebels fell, and Vader's brutality left a trail of bodies, Imperial and civilian alike. Obi-Wan confronted him amid the smoldering ruins, accusing him of recklessness, but Vader's gaze was unyielding. He had saved the mission, he argued, and the rebellion could not afford to fight cleanly. The victory on Ryloth earned Vader a grudging respect from some rebels, but it deepened the rift with Obi-Wan. In the Tantive 4's medbay, as droids tended to the wounded, Obi-Wan sat alone, haunted by memories of Anakin's laughter, his reckless courage, now buried beneath Vader's cold pragmatism. Leia, observing from the shadows, sensed the pain in Obi-Wan's silence and began to question Vader's true nature. She approached him in the ship's brig, where he sat in meditation, his armor scarred from the battle. Her questions were sharp, probing his motives, his past, but Vader offered only cryptic answers, his voice a mechanical growl. He spoke of betrayal, of a galaxy that devoured the weak, but his words carried a trace of something softer, regret, perhaps, or a longing for redemption he dared not name. Back on Alderaan, the rebellion faced a new threat. Intelligence from Vader revealed that the Empire was developing a superweapon on Scarif, a tropical world fortified by Imperial garrisons. The weapon, a prototype for the Death Star's laser, could annihilate entire fleets. Mon Mothma proposed a daring strike to destroy the facility before it could be completed, but the mission required infiltrating an Imperial stronghold, a task only Vader could lead. Obi-Wan volunteered to join, determined to watch Vader closely, while Leia insisted on coming, her resolve unshakable despite Bail's protests. Rex and a squad of elite rebels, including the pilot Wedge Antilles, rounded out the team. As they prepared, Vader stood apart, his mind drifting to Padmé's face, her voice urging him to protect their child. He did not know Leia was that child, but the Force stirred within him, a faint echo of the light he had forsaken. The journey to Scarif was fraught with tension. In the Tantive IV's war room, Obi-Wan and Vader clashed over strategy, their voices rising as old wounds reopened. Obi-Wan accused Vader of serving only himself, while Vader retorted that Obi-Wan's ideals had failed the Jedi. Leia mediated, her presence a quiet anchor, forcing both men to focus on the mission. Rex, ever practical, briefed the team on Scarif's defenses, shield gates, TIE fighter squadrons, and the Second Sister, an Inquisitor trained by Vader himself. The plan was simple, but brutal. Vader would lead a frontal assault to draw Imperial forces, while Obi-Wan, Leia, and Rex infiltrated the data vault to plant explosives. Wedge would provide air support, dodging Scarif's orbital defenses. As the ship dropped out of hyperspace, Scarif's turquoise oceans gleamed below, a deceptive paradise hiding the Empire's iron grip. On Scarif, the battle erupted with unrelenting fury. Vader stormed the beachhead, his white armor splattered with sand and blood, his lightsaber a crimson blur as he tore through stormtroopers and AT-ST walkers. Rebel troops rallied behind him, their blasters blazing, but the Empire's numbers were overwhelming. Obi-Wan, Leia, and Rex slipped through the chaos, navigating the facility's labyrinthine corridors. The Second Sister awaited them in the data vault, her double-bladed saber spinning with lethal precision. Obi-Wan engaged her, their blades clashing in a storm of blue and red, while Leia and Rex planted the charges. The Inquisitor's taunts cut deeper than her saber, mocking Obi-Wan's failure to save Anakin, but he fought with a clarity born of grief, disarming her with a swift strike. Leia activated the detonators, and the team fled as alarms blared. Outside, Vader faced Tarkin's reinforcements, his strength waning under the onslaught. TIE fighters screamed overhead, and Wedge's X-Wing squadron fought desperately to clear a path. The Second Sister, wounded but relentless, emerged to confront Vader, accusing him of treason. Their duel was a clash of titans, saber against saber, the Force rippling with their fury. Vader's white armor cracked, his mechanical limbs sparking, but he drove his blade through her chest, ending her threat. The facility exploded behind them, a fireball consuming the superweapon's core. The rebels escaped aboard the Tantive IV, but the victory was bittersweet. Half the team was lost, and Vader's injuries were severe. Leia, watching him in the med bay, felt a strange pull, a connection she could not explain. The Tantive IV streaked through hyperspace, its hull scarred from the battle on Scarif. Inside, the air was thick with exhaustion and unspoken tension. Darth Vader lay in the med bay, his white armor cracked and sparking, droids working feverishly to stabilize his cybernetic systems. His mechanical breaths were uneven, each one a reminder of the fragility beneath his formidable presence. Leia Organa stood at the viewport, her eyes tracing the swirling blue of hyperspace, her mind wrestling with the enigma of the man who had saved them. Obi-Wan Kenobi, seated in the corner, cleaned his lightsaber with methodical precision, but his gaze drifted to Vader, haunted by memories of Anakin's fall. Captain Rex, nursing a blaster wound, coordinated with Wedge Antilles to ensure their route back to Alderaan was secure. The victory on Scarif had crippled the Empire's superweapon program, but the cost weighed heavily. Friends lost, trust strained, and Vader's loyalty still a dangerous unknown. On Alderaan, the rebel leaders convened in the war room, their faces etched with cautious hope. Mon Mothma praised the mission's success, but her voice carried a warning. The Empire would retaliate swiftly. Bail Organa, his expression grim, revealed intelligence from defectors. Sidious was accelerating the Death Star's construction, diverting resources from across the galaxy. Vader, now able to stand, his armor patched but functional, offered a chilling insight. The Death Star was not just a weapon, but a symbol of Sidious's absolute control, designed to crush hope itself. His words, delivered in a low, mechanical growl, silenced the room. Obi-Wan, standing at the edge, felt a pang of recognition. Anakin's strategic mind still lingered, buried beneath the darkness. Leia, her resolve unshaken, proposed a new mission. Locate the Death Star's plans, rumored to be stored on the Imperial fortress world of Lothal. The room erupted in debate, but Vader's presence, a towering shadow, forced a decision. He would lead the strike, with Obi-Wan, Leia, and Rex as his reluctant allies. The journey to Lothal was a study in fragile alliances. Aboard the Ghost, a modified freighter loaned by the Spectres, a small rebel cell, the team prepared for infiltration. Hera Syndulla, the Twi'lek pilot, eyed Vader warily but respected his reputation as a warrior. Kanan Jarrus, a Jedi survivor, sensed the darkness in Vader and kept his distance, his hand resting on his lightsaber. Leia, ever the diplomat, bridged the gaps, her questions to Vader growing bolder. She asked about his past, his reasons for fighting Sidious, but his answers were evasive, laced with bitterness. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, wrestled with his role as Vader's keeper, his heart torn between hope and fear. Rex, pragmatic as ever, focused on the mission, briefing the team on Lothal's defenses, a sprawling Imperial factory complex, guarded by TIE fighters, 8 At-walkers, and the Grand Inquisitor, Sidious's most lethal enforcer. The plan was audacious. Vader and Kanan would create a diversion, while Obi-Wan, Leia, and Hera infiltrated the data core. Lothal's skyline glowed with the orange haze of industrial furnaces, its air heavy with the stench of fuel and metal. The Ghost slipped through the planet's orbital defenses, Hera's piloting threading the needle between TIE patrols. On the ground, Vader and Kanan stormed the factory's outer perimeter, their lightsabers igniting in a blaze of red and green. Vader moved with ruthless efficiency, his blade cleaving through stormtroopers and droids, while Kanan fought with a grace tempered by caution, deflecting bolts to protect fleeing workers. The diversion worked. Imperial forces converged on them, leaving the data core vulnerable. Obi-Wan, Leia, and Hera navigated the factory's labyrinth, dodging security droids and laser traps. Leia's quick thinking disarmed a lockdown protocol, her hands steady despite the blaring alarms. Obi-Wan's lightsaber hummed, cutting through blast doors, his focus unshaken even as memories of Anakin's recklessness surfaced. In the data core, Hera hacked into the Imperial network, her fingers flying across the console as she downloaded the Death Star schematics. But the Grand Inquisitor was waiting, his double-bladed saber spinning with menacing precision. Obi-Wan engaged him, their blades clashing in a storm of blue and red, sparks illuminating the sterile chamber. The Inquisitor's taunts were venomous, mocking Obi-Wan's failure to save Anakin, but Obi-Wan fought with a quiet resolve, his movements a dance of precision. Leia and Hera worked frantically, transferring the data to a portable drive, but the Inquisitor's force push sent Hera sprawling, her console sparking. The return to Alderaan was somber. Obi-Wan disarmed the Inquisitor with a swift strike, but the victory was fleeting. Reinforcements arrived, and the team was forced to flee, the data drive clutched tightly in Leia's hands. Outside, Vader and Kanan were surrounded, their backs to a smoldering AT-8. Vader's strength was waning, his armor dented and sparking, but his rage fueled him, the Force erupting in a wave that crushed a squad of stormtroopers. Kanan, sensing Vader's darkness, hesitated, but a TIE fighter's strafing run forced them to fight as one, their sabers weaving a deadly arc. The Ghost swooped in, Hera's piloting dodging laser fire as Rex manned the turrets, blasting a path to safety. The team escaped, but the cost was steep. Kanan was wounded, his arm burned by a saber graze, and Vader's injuries required immediate attention. Aboard the Ghost, Leia confronted Vader, her voice sharp with frustration. She demanded to know why he fought so recklessly, why he seemed to court death. Vader's silence was heavy, but his yellow eyes flickered, a trace of Anakin's pain breaking through. Back on Alderaan, the schematics revealed the Death Star's weakness. A thermal exhaust port, a flaw Vader confirmed was intentional, a trap set by Sidious to lure the rebellion into a false victory. Mon Mothma proposed a desperate plan, a strike on the Death Star before it became operational, using the schematics to target the port. But the mission required a pilot of unmatched skill, someone who could navigate the station's defenses. From the shadows of the war room, a young man stepped forward. Luke Skywalker, a farm boy from Tatooine, trained in secret by Obi-Wan. Luke's presence sent a jolt through Vader, the Force resonating with a connection he could not name. Obi-Wan, sensing the truth, kept silent, his heart heavy with the weight of secrets. Leia, unaware of her own lineage, welcomed Luke's courage, her trust in him immediate. The rebellion mobilized, its fleet gathering in the Sullust system. Vader, now a reluctant linchpin, shared Sidious's likely strategies, warning of the Emperor's ability to sense their moves through the Force. Obi-Wan trained Luke in the basics of lightsaber combat, his lessons laced with caution, urging the boy to trust his instincts, but beware the dark side. Luke, brash but earnest, absorbed the teachings, his blue eyes burning with determination. Leia coordinated logistics, her leadership inspiring even the most battle-weary rebels. Rex, ever loyal, prepared his squad, his faith in the cause unshaken despite the scars of war. Vader, isolated in his quarters, meditated on the Force, his mind a battlefield of light and dark. Padme's face haunted him, her voice a whisper urging him to protect their children, though he did not know their names. The Force stirred, pulling him toward Luke and Leia, but the darkness within resisted, chaining him to his vow of vengeance. The mission to Sullust was a prelude to the final strike. The Empire had established a relay station there, feeding data to the Death Star's navigation systems. Destroying it would delay the station's completion, buying the rebellion time. Vader, Obi-Wan, Luke, Leia, and Rex led a mixed team of rebels and Spectres, including Hera and the droid C-3PO, whose protocol knowledge proved vital. Sullust's volcanic terrain mirrored Mustafar, its lava flows a grim reminder of Vader's past. The team infiltrated the relay station, a fortress carved into a caldera, its walls bristling with turbo lasers. Vader and Luke fought side by side, an uneasy alliance, their sabers, red and green, cutting through droid sentries. Luke's raw talent surprised Vader, his movements echoing Anakin's own, stirring a flicker of pride he quickly suppressed. Obi-Wan and Leia navigated the control hub, planting charges, while Rex and Hera provided cover, their blasters a steady rhythm against the Imperial onslaught. The mission turned deadly when the third sister, another Inquisitor, ambushed them. Her saber, a single red blade, struck with surgical precision, targeting Luke. Vader intervened, his own blade meeting hers in a clash that shook the chamber. The duel was brutal, Vader's strength overwhelming, but the Inquisitor's agility kept her alive, her taunts piercing his armor. She spoke of Sidious's plans for Vader, a pawn to be discarded once the Death Star was complete. Vader's rage flared, the Force erupting in a blast that hurled her into a lava flow, her screams swallowed by the molten tide. The relay station exploded, its data feeds severed, but the victory was marred by loss. Several rebels fell, and Luke's arm was grazed by a blaster, a wound that mirrored Anakin's own scars. Aboard the Ghost, Obi-Wan tended to Luke, his silence heavy with the fear that history was repeating itself. The Death Star schematics were complete, the relay station destroyed, but the Empire's shadow loomed larger than ever. Leia, studying the data, discovered a hidden transmission within the schematics, a message from Sidious, taunting the rebellion, promising their destruction. Vader, repaired but weakened, stood before the war room, his voice steady as he outlined the final plan, A direct assault on the Death Star, with Luke leading the X-Wing strike, Vader and Obi-Wan infiltrating the station to confront Sidious. Leia would coordinate from the command ship, her leadership the rebellion's backbone. Rex volunteered to lead the ground assault, his loyalty unwavering. Luke, his confidence tempered by Sullust's losses, met Vader's gaze, sensing a connection he could not explain. The Force hummed between them, a bridge of light and dark, father and son unknowingly bound. As the rebel fleet prepared, Vader stood alone on Alderaan's cliffs, the wind tugging at his tattered cape. The Force swirled around him, memories of Padme clashing with the rage that had defined him. He saw Luke's face, Leia's resolve, and felt the pull of redemption, faint but persistent. Obi-Wan approached, his presence a quiet challenge. Their words were few, but heavy. Obi-Wan spoke of hope, of the Anakin he had loved, but Vader's response was a bitter laugh, insisting that Anakin was dead. Yet, as Obi-Wan walked away, Vader's hand tightened on his saber, the conflict within him growing. The galaxy awaited, and the Death Star's shadow loomed ever closer. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace, a patchwork armada of X-Wings, Y-Wings, and frigates dwarfed by the Death Star's monstrous silhouette. Its gray surface loomed like a moon forged of durasteel, its super laser a glowing wound in the void. Aboard the command ship, Home 1, Leia Organa stood at the bridge, her voice steady as she coordinated the assault. Luke Skywalker, strapped into his X-Wing, led Red Squadron, his focus razor-sharp, despite the odds. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, aboard a stolen Imperial shuttle, slipped through the chaos, their mission to infiltrate the station and confront Emperor Palpatine. Captain Rex, leading a ground team on the forest moon of Endor, fought to disable the Death Star's shield generator, his blasters blazing through Imperial lines. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance, and the Force pulsed with tension, light and dark colliding in a storm of destiny. The battle erupted with blinding fury. X-Wings weaved through TIE fighter swarms, laser fire stitching the void. Wedge Antilles, flanking Luke, blasted a TIE interceptor, his voice crackling over the comms. Leia, her eyes fixed on the tactical display, ordered the fleet to target the Death Star's turbo lasers, buying time for Rex's team. On Endor, Rex and Hera Syndulla led a desperate charge, dodging AT-ST walkers and stormtrooper volleys. Ewok allies, small but fierce, ambushed Imperial patrols, their slings and spears felling troopers in the underbrush. The shield generator loomed, a tower of cold metal, its hum a heartbeat of oppression. Rex planted charges, his hands steady despite the blood on his armor, but an AT-AT's cannon fire forced a retreat. Hera's quick thinking, rigging a stolen speeder to ram the walker, bought them seconds, but the cost was heavy, with half the team lost in the blast. Aboard the Death Star, Vader and Obi-Wan navigated its sterile corridors, their sabers unlit but ready. Stormtroopers fell silently, throats crushed by Vader's force grip, while Obi-Wan disabled security droids with precise strikes. The air grew heavy, the dark side coiling like smoke as they neared the Emperor's throne room. Vader's mechanical breaths quickened, his mind flashing to Mustafar, to Padme's lifeless form, to Sidious's laughter. Obi-Wan, sensing his turmoil, placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent plea to hold fast. The throne room doors hissed open, revealing Palpatine, his hooded figure framed by the starfield beyond. His yellow eyes gleamed with malevolent delight, his voice a venomous purr as he mocked Vader's betrayal and Obi-Wan's failure. Two crimson-clad royal guards lunged, their force pikes sparking, but Vader's saber ignited, a red blur that cleaved them in half. Obi-Wan's blue blade joined, and the duel began. In space, Luke's X-Wing dove into the Death Star's trench, TIE fighters screaming behind him. His targeting computer flickered, the exhaust port a distant speck. Wedge and Lando Calrissian, piloting the Millennium Falcon, cleared his path, their ships shuddering under enemy fire. Luke's voice, calm but strained, echoed over the comms, urging his squadron to hold formation. Leia, aboard Home 1, diverted frigates to draw off an Imperial Star Destroyer, her heart pounding as she tracked Luke's progress. On Endor, Rex detonated the charges, the shield generator erupting in a fireball that lit the forest. The Death Star's shield flickered, exposing its core, but Imperial reinforcements pinned Rex's team, their blasters running dry. Hera, wounded, rallied the Ewoks, their war cries a defiant roar against the Empire's might. The throne room became a maelstrom of light and shadow. Palpatine's lightsaber, a hidden red blade, struck with unnatural speed, forcing Obi-Wan into a defensive spiral. Vader's saber clashed with his, the Force erupting in waves that cracked the obsidian floor. Sidious's lightning arced, searing Obi-Wan's side, but he fought on, his blade a beacon of resolve. Vader, his armor sparking, hurled debris at the Emperor, buying Obi-Wan a moment to recover. Sidious's laughter filled the chamber, his taunts piercing Vader's mind. Padme's death, Anakin's weakness, the futility of redemption. The words struck deeper than any blade, and Vader faltered, his yellow eyes flickering with doubt. Obi-Wan, bloodied but unyielding, shouted for him to fight, his voice cutting through the dark. The Force surged, and Vader roared, his saber slashing with renewed fury. In the trench, Luke's X-Wing shuddered, TIE lasers grazing his hull. His astromech, R2-D2, screeched, rerouting power to shields. Luke closed his eyes, the Force guiding his hands, his father's courage a faint echo in his heart. Wedge's voice crackled, urging him to fire, but Luke waited, trusting his instincts. The exhaust port loomed, and he launched the proton torpedoes, their trails a streak of hope. The Death Star trembled, its core igniting in a chain reaction. Leia, aboard Home 1, held her breath, her eyes locked on the station's glow. On Endor, Rex and Hera escaped the Imperial onslaught, Ewok traps felling the last AT-ST. The shield was down, the path clear, but the cost was etched in their faces. Friends lost, futures uncertain. The throne room duel reached its zenith. Sidious's lightning overwhelmed Obi-Wan, hurling him against the throne, his saber clattering away. Vader, his armor cracked, lunged, his blade meeting Sidious's in a shower of sparks. The Emperor's power surged, lightning tearing through Vader's circuits, his mechanical limbs seizing. But within the pain, a vision broke through. Luke's face, Leia's resolve, Padme's love. The Force flared, light piercing the dark, and Vader seized Sidious, his hands crushing the Emperor's throat. Lightning consumed them both, Vader's armor melting, his breaths ragged. With a final surge, he hurled Sidious into the reactor shaft, the dark side screaming as the Emperor's body disintegrated. Vader collapsed, his body failing, but his eyes, no longer yellow, held a glimmer of peace. The Death Star's core erupted, flames racing through its corridors. Obi-Wan, wounded but alive, dragged Vader to the shuttle, his strength fueled by desperation. Luke's X-Wing escaped the trench, the station's explosion a supernova behind him. The rebel fleet cheered, Leia's voice breaking with relief as she ordered the retreat. On Endor, Rex and Hera embraced, the forest silent but for the crackle of fires. The shuttle carrying Obi-Wan and Vader docked with Home 1, medics rushing to stabilize Vader's fading life. Luke, his face streaked with sweat, ran to the medbay, his heart pounding as he saw the broken figure on the table. Leia joined him, her hand finding his, their bond unspoken but profound. Obi-Wan, his side bandaged, stood vigil, his eyes tracing the man who had been his brother. The rebellion regrouped on Yavin 4, its temple ruins a symbol of renewal. Vader, sustained by Bacta and sheer will, faced the rebel leaders, his white armor replaced by simple robes, his face scarred but human. Mon Mothma offered clemency, acknowledging his role in Sidious's defeat, but justice demanded accountability. Vader accepted, his voice soft, confessing his crimes. The Jedi Temple, the younglings, Padme's death. Luke and Leia listened, their faces a mix of pain and resolve, unaware of their lineage but bound by the Force. Obi-Wan, his heart heavy, spoke of Anakin's light, urging the rebellion to judge the man, not the monster. The council agreed to exile, not execution. Vader would live out his days on Tatooine, aiding moisture farmers, a quiet penance for his sins. Months later, the galaxy began to heal. The Empire fractured, its moffs scrambling for power, but the rebellion's victories inspired worlds to rise. Leia, now a senator, led peace talks, her compassion forging alliances. Luke, training under Obi-Wan, embraced his Jedi path, his lightsaber a beacon of hope. On Tatooine, Vader, now Anakin once more, stood atop a dune, the twin suns casting long shadows. His hands, one flesh, one metal, clutched Padme's necklace, its weight a reminder of love and loss. He worked the fields, his strength aiding the weak, his solitude a canvas for reflection. Obi-Wan visited, their talks brief but warm, a bridge rebuilt from ashes. Luke and Leia, guided by the Force, felt their father's presence, a distant star in their hearts. The Jedi Order reformed, its temples open to all, led by Luke and Ahsoka Tano, who emerged from hiding to train a new generation. The Republic, under Chancellor Bail Organa, dismantled imperial remnants, its laws rooted in justice, not fear. Anakin, in his exile, found peace in small acts, repairing vaporators, teaching children to dream. The Force flowed freely, its light unshadowed by Sith. The galaxy, scarred but resilient, turned toward a future where hope, not fear, defined its course. Anakin's legacy, carried by Luke and Leia, was not one of darkness, but of redemption, a testament to the power of choice. And folks, that's our story. This one was a wild ride, diving deep into Vader's struggle and the rebellion's fight. Inspired by the epic duels and emotional weight of Star Wars, I hope you felt the Force in this tale. Let me know what you think and what you'd like to see next. Thanks for reading, and I'll catch you in the next adventure.